Hari Hari. See. Dearest devotees, Hare Krishna, everyone. So I welcome you all for our week 7 of Srila Prabhupada Lilamrta. And we've finished with volume 1, and now we are on to volume 2. Tonight, we have a very special guest from a very close place, Africa. And to present Prabhuji, I will invite His Grace, Vidur Das Prabhu, to please unmute, and he can present His Grace, Nrsingananda Das Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Vidur Prabhu, please unmute, and then you can.
Hare Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances, Prabhu. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. So a small introduction of our guests for today. Nrsimhananda Prabhu is a well-known devotee in Mauritius. He has been coming over the years to do many courses with Her Grace Madhuri Dasi to teach Bhakti Sastri and to conduct training sessions like Japa retreat. He's the founder of Chaitanya Life Academy and is a green disciple of His Divine Grace, Abhay Charan Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. He studied philosophy in India over 6 years from 1997. Since then, he has been practicing and teaching this science. He served as temple president in ISKCON, Hillbrow, Nigeria, and Midrand in South Africa. He has conducted structured courses based on various parts of the Vedas. And he has inspired many devotees around South Africa, Nairobi, Hong Kong, India, and why not in Mauritius? He's graduated in BSc Computer Science. He's employed in an ICT company, and he's dedicated to education and training through Chaitanya Life Academy. Through these sessions, many devotees have become inspired to join devotional service. He is presently doing practice, not practice, but doing classes on Srimad Bhagavatam online every Saturday. We recommend you, for those who are interested, to follow Prabhu classes every Saturday from 7 p.m. So Prabhu, the floor is for you now. Hare Krishna. So we will be glad to hear from you now.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Vidura Prabhu. Dandavats to all the wonderful devotees online. just want to share my screen and also do a sound check to see everyone can hear. Am I audible? Is my audio okay? Can I start?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yes, yes.
All right. Thank you very much. So we will chant Jai Radha Madhava and then do the Mangala Charan prayers before we hear about Srila Prabhupada's glories. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Ramunativa Vanachariyam Jayavanda Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Baradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunativa Vanachariyam Jayavanda Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Shri Prabhupada ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki Jai, Nitai Gopramanande. So I'm just going to share stop my screen sharing again because I need to activate the sound. Okay, you should be able to see my screen again. So we'll recite the Mangala Charan. Om Magyanatimi Vandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmei Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantitam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Sja Shri Upam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatham Tam Tam Sajivam Advaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sakana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanta Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavinebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So welcome to this wonderful project of covering the whole of Srila Prabhupada Lilamrta for the 125th anniversary, Srila Prabhupada's appearance anniversary. Tonight we're going to be covering Volume 2, Chapter 8, Planting the Seed. These are few pictures of where Srila Prabhupada planted the seeds of Krishna consciousness in the West, and these beautiful seeds fructified into wonderful devotees that started spreading Krishna consciousness far and wide across the globe. We find the street corner here. This is where Srila Prabhupada actually was staying on the second floor. The first three windows, actually Srila Prabhupada's quarters. This is the storefront, the garage that is described in front of the storefront, and the courtyard that Srila Prabhupada had to actually go through to his quarters. Why is it important for us to read and hear about Srila Prabhupada from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrta? Srila Prabhupada in the Bhagavatam says, one should learn how to associate with the devotees of the Lord by gathering with them to chant the glories of the Lord. This process is most purifying. As devotees thus develop their loving friendship, they feel mutual happiness and satisfaction. And by thus encouraging one another, they are able to give up material sense gratification, which is the cause of all suffering. It is described in the scriptures that when one glorifies a devotee of the Lord, a pure devotee of the Lord, we actually we develop the qualities of that personality we glorify and hear. So it is of paramount of importance that we glorify Srila Prabhupada and hear about Srila Prabhupada's pastimes, which are completely connected and non-different from the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. They have the same effect, if not more, because it pleases Krishna more when we hear about the glories of his pure devotees. And it also strengthens our relationship with Srila Prabhupada. We can appreciate the sacrifice that Srila Prabhupada went through for us, and therefore hearing about Srila Prabhupada's glories for us is very, very important. 26 Second Avenue, the shop had a title called Matchless Gift. And Srila Prabhupada lived at 26 Second Avenue from July 1966 to January 1967. And the devotees vacated 26 Second Avenue at the end of December 1968. So they spent about a year and a half at the storefront. And it became, after they left, it became a second-hand furniture shop. And by this time, the devotees had opened centers in San Francisco, Montreal, Los Angeles, Boston, Buffalo, and Santa Fe. July the 1st, 1966, New York, Satsuru Maharaj described at 26 Second Avenue, there were actually two storefronts. The one to the north was a coin laundry, and the one to the south had been a gift shop, but was now vacant. Both had narrow entrances, large display windows, and dull paint. Beneath the matchless gift sign was a window 6 feet square that a few weeks before had displayed matchboxes decorated with photos of movie stars of the 30s and 40s. The sign matchless gift was the only remaining memento of the nostalgic gift shop that had recently moved out. And in his diary, Srila Prabhupada writes, "Today, I entered the new house at 26 2nd Avenue, rear portion, room number B1. For my purpose, it is all good. I do not know why Krishna is trying to establish me in New York. I am his servant's servant, and therefore let his desire be fulfilled through my agency." So here we see Srila Prabhupada, his mood, that he's simply an instrument, a servant of his servant. And in that mood, Srila Prabhupada was acting as a perfect instrument in whichever way Krishna wanted to use him to fulfill his desire to please and fulfill the order of his spiritual master to spread Krishna consciousness in the Western world. There's a beautiful clip, a movie that you can see online. You can Google on YouTube. It's called the 26th Matchless Gift, the first ISKCON temple, 26 2nd Avenue, New York City. It's in high definition. And the whole video is specifically on 26 2nd Avenue, the devotees in the temple, they're chanting, very, very nice. And a few of the devotees, Kirtanana Prabhu, etc., are speaking, sharing their realizations. And these were the devotees that were actually cultivated at 26 2nd Avenue that started preaching very, very wonderfully and serving Srila Prabhupada, supporting Srila Prabhupada. This chapter is entitled Planting the Seed. And we know that in the first volume also there is planting the seed. Srila Prabhupada, he tried to establish Krishna consciousness in India, and he initiated one disciple as well, but it really didn't gain any traction. He expected the devotee, the more to come forward and support him, and that support wasn't there. Then Srila Prabhupada came to the West. Srila Prabhupada initially, did everything, but slowly these sincere souls started to serve Srila Prabhupada and practically dedicated their lives in serving Srila Prabhupada. These are some of the lectures that Srila Prabhupada gave during the 26 2nd Avenue stay. Prabhupada was giving systematic lectures, Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter, 5th chapter, 6th chapter onwards. And we see also Prabhupada did the first initiation in the West. In fact, the initiation ceremony was on the 9th, Prabhupada's Vyasa Puja, appearance day. And Prabhupada also celebrated the first Janmashtami in the West. Before this, he celebrated Janmashtami the year before on the Jaladuta. And Radha Ashtami was also celebrated the first time in the Western world. So a very, very important, a very significant period in the movement, in the Hare Krishna movement, where Srila Prabhupada is really sowing the seeds that have now blossomed beautifully across the world. I'm going to go through a summary, a quick summary. This chapter was fairly lengthy, and I'm going to try to cover a summary, very quick, brief summary, and then we'll go into some little more detail into some of the main parts of this wonderful pastime of Srila Prabhupada and in the West, 26 2nd Avenue. So the chapter starts off August 1966. There's a description of the front of the temple and the inside the monastery amidst a city slum, the small description of the environment and the temple. Then there's a description of the kirtans and different instruments that Srila Prabhupada allowed the devotees to engage. Everyone, Prabhupada welcomed and allowed everyone to be engaged in this wonderful process of congregational chanting. Srila Prabhupada is in his back room worshipping Shri Krishna. And this worship that Srila Prabhupada was doing was actually translating Srimad Bhagavatam. And he had an open door policy. Anyone could come and knock on the door, and Srila Prabhupada would receive them and speak to them. The intimate discussions between Srila Prabhupada and the students about his life in India and his experience in America. They were very curious to learn about Srila Prabhupada's life in India. Where was he born, his family, and Prabhupada was very happy to share with them different aspects of his life. Prabhupada also shared his experience when he first came to America. Prabhupada describes how when he came to America, the one day he walked out and he saw, that somebody had painted, practically the whole city white because it was snowing. And this was the first time Prabhupada experienced snow. He never knew about snow. And Prabhupada makes the point that he thought somebody actually painted the whole city white. Then there's a beautiful description of Keith cooking lunch for Srila Prabhupada and the guests. Srila Prabhupada offering the bhoga. Prabhupada would, after the feast would be cooked, Srila Prabhupada would come and offer obeisances and ring the bell and offer the prasadam, the bhoga. And the devotees call this the bell ceremony. Then getting high from honoring prasad, Srila Prabhupada encouraged everyone eat as much as possible. So the kirtan and the prasad were the two most powerful devotional activities that Prabhupada gave these souls at this time, and they really enjoyed these two activities. Srila Prabhupada personally cooking the Sunday feasts and serving the guests more and more. Just consider the pure devotee of the Lord cooking, and not just cooking, but from the prayer that we read, Srila Prabhupada at this point in all his activities, he's completely absorbed and praying intensely to the Lord to inspire these souls in Krishna consciousness. So the mood of all the activities, what to talk about the cooking, was surcharged with prayer, with great devotion. And everybody was eating this devotion of Srila Prabhupada in every way. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, activities in the temple room. Srila Prabhupada's followers slowly now started helping Srila Prabhupada in his daily activities. In the beginning, Srila Prabhupada had to do everything himself. He had to clean the temple room, get the bhoga, prepare the bhoga, cook, serve, clean up after that. Then slowly the devotees started supporting Srila Prabhupada. A description of Srila Prabhupada waiting in queue to bathe and putting tilak and the bell ceremony. So as the devotees started joining Srila Prabhupada, then now the devotees started staying at 26th Avenue, and there was a queue to take bath. And Srila Prabhupada was one of them. He waited also in line because these devotees, they didn't really know how to serve the spiritual master. This was a completely, totally new experience for them. They had to learn everything. Even when Srila Prabhupada would be speaking to them about different different aspects of his life, talking about he's taking sannyas, playing mridanga, his father teaching him to play mridanga. And at every point, they had to stop Srila Prabhupada and ask him, what is sannyas? What is mridanga? Because they were totally new. Then Don testing Srila Prabhupada's tolerance and Srila Prabhupada's concern about infant ISKCON. We're going to be covering that a little more in detail. Ralph's lack of interest in spiritual discipline, not wanting to chant and voicing his views. Bill Epstein's honest, open relationship with Srila Prabhupada, supporting but not committed. Many souls would come and support Srila Prabhupada in different ways, not really take completely to the process, but they were supporting Srila Prabhupada in different ways. Carl Higgins, who helped Srila Prabhupada incorporating ISKCON, but did not accept the conclusion of the philosophy. He didn't like the idea of giving up sex life. So he appreciated the movement, but when it came to giving up sex life, nope, that's not for me. Then Karl Becker's preference of a more peaceful kirtan and an experience of teenagers shouting about the kirtan. So when there would be kirtans, then the youngs, they would, because Prabhupada was in the lower east side, people were intoxicated, of the lower modes, and they would come and they would enter the temple room and they would shout Srila Prabhupada and the devotees and stop making noise. So Carol Becker didn't like that type of, she preferred like in a very quiet place, just having peaceful kirtan. So different people had different experiences. James Green, feeling embarrassed and could not become seriously committed, he preferred to live alone. Then we hear Robert Nelson speaking, and Prabhupada's old uptown friend, others that helped slowly drifted away. Bruce Scarf, a New York University graduate, hearing and meeting Srila Prabhupada and his affiliation to India and Indian culture. So Bruce, he became Brahmananda, and he had a background. He liked India, he liked the Indian culture, and he wanted to go to India and get a spiritual master also. So he was interested in going to India, learning, then coming back and teaching. And eventually he heard about Srila Prabhupada and started coming to the temple. Chuck Burnett, another yoga practitioner living on 12th Street, was a progressive jazz flautist who heard of the Swami and visited him. Steve Goriano, the son of a New York fireman experimenting with LSD, also visited the gift shop, the Matchless Gift. Inevitably meeting with Srila Prabhupada meant a philosophical discussion and also a personal exchange. We're going to go a little in detail with that. Srila Prabhupada and his followers invited them, the members, to the Ananda Ashram for the upstate countryside. So there was a ashram in the countryside, and then the followers of Dr. Mishra, they had an ashram there, and they invited Srila Prabhupada for a retreat. And the devotees went, and they had a wonderful program held at the retreat with a lecture and ecstatic kirtan that united everyone in dancing and chanting. Then 31st August, Srila Prabhupada and the devotees invited to a United Nations peace vigil, a prayer for peace. Srila Prabhupada cooking personally for receiving Larry Bogart, which ended into a disappointment due to Stanley. So Larry Bogart, he was involved with the United Nations, and he appreciated what Prabhupada had come and accepted his invitation. And that the next day, Srila Prabhupada heard that Larry is going to be visiting him. And Prabhupada personally decided to cook a special feast for Larry. Unfortunately, Stanley, who was not in the right frame of mind, Prabhupada told him to go downstairs and make sure that nobody comes and disturbs him while he's cooking in the kitchen. So Stanley went down, and Stanley made sure nobody came upstairs while Prabhupada was cooking. But when Larry came, then Stanley also told him that he cannot come into the temple and told him to stand outside. So Larry was waiting outside in the hot sun. He had a chair, he was sitting. And then after some time, he came back and he asked Stanley, can he see the Swami? And he said, no, nobody can see the Swami. In the meantime, Srila Prabhupada was wondering, where's Larry? He hasn't come, And then when they found out that Stanley had actually chased him away because Larry then left, Prabhupada was very disappointed because Larry was actually going to help Srila Prabhupada, support Srila Prabhupada by getting contacts with the embassy, etc., and trying to support Srila Prabhupada's mission. So that, unfortunately, was a great disappointment. Prabhupada was very upset. Then Keith requests Srila Prabhupada if he could become his disciple, and Srila Prabhupada agrees, telling them he will hold an initiation. September 8th is Janmashtami, celebration of Janmashtami and understanding and preparing for initiation. Here the devotees prepared their own beads for initiation. Then 11 initiates received their spiritual names. Srila Prabhupada was happy, and most of the disciples went home, leaving Srila Prabhupada to clean up. September 10th, morning after the initiation, the preparation of the first wedding, where Srila Prabhupada personally cooked 15 preparations, and the chapter then ends there. So this is a quick summary of this chapter. Now I'd like to play an 8-minute video clip, really showing the scene. It's only about 8 minutes, but it really captures, it's a video of the 26th Avenue, showing Srila Prabhupada and the devotees.
I'm Reed Collins. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. A hypnotic rhythmic chant of 16 words has replaced LSD and other drugs for some in New York's East Village. On 2nd Avenue and 1st Street is a storefront in which a Hindu Swami has set up shop. There, his American disciples are learning about Krishna consciousness.
Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Ram.
And in nature, we have all of the beautiful things and ugly things. We have duality. But the chant is to get us out of nature and into Krishna's superior universe, which is the spiritual universe. And this is what the chant is really intended to do. It's to take you off into eternity. I started chanting in July,
I was still taking LSD at the time, but he was against LSD. He said, I told him, what do you think of my taking LSD for spiritual realization, expanded consciousness? I was interested in staying high forever, as it were, maintaining an awareness of the universe that was flowing through me and past me at every second of my life. He says, that's not necessary. He said, your spiritual life is already here. He said, you don't need to take anything for your spiritual life. And I knew he was right. And he had that exalted state of consciousness. I sensed it. And I knew he didn't take anything. And I knew that I wanted this state of consciousness, and that he could teach it to me.
Krishna consciousness is nothing but the moment-to-moment realization that nothing is yours. Neither anything you use in this world, or your body, or even your mind. Krishna is our divine Father, the one Lord. Doesn't make any difference what you call him, Allah, Muhammad, or Buddha, or Jehovah, Christ. There's only one. Krishna is our Father. All things are his, and we have happiness, true happiness, when we use all things for him.
I practice my Krishna consciousness by chanting when I work and on my way to work. And this is what we ask all good people, to try chanting. Try it when you wake up in the morning. Try it on your way to work on the subway. I know I chant every day on the way to work in the subway, and other people are kicking and shoving. I'm chanting, and I enjoy my subway rides.
All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled.
And now we are going to go uptown to St. Mark's Place to do our kirtan and spread joy and peace to the people of New York. We invite all our friends to join us. Hare Krishna. Hare Rama, Hare Rama.
Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So the devotee that actually sees Srila Prabhupada strolling 26 Second Avenue, and the devotee that was in the second devotee, Keith Kirtananda Prabhu, that was speaking. We can, and all this goes to all the devotees. We can really, we can get a glimpse of when Srila Prabhupada would be speaking in his lectures and appreciating what these devotees have done to serve, to support him and help him in his service to his spiritual master. Srila Prabhupada sometimes would tear in appreciation, in gratitude. And therefore, we can understand that no matter what the situation, what happens in the lives of these great souls, because of their dedication and support to Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada's mercy and Prabhupada's mercy would always eternally be with them. in this regard, Kirtananda Prabhu, he obviously started expanding Krishna consciousness, and he built the temple in New Vrindavan, the Srila Prabhupada Palace of Gold. He wanted to offer a temple, and the Yadubar Prabhu and his wife they made a movie on New Vrindavan years later, and they were going to screen that film called The Spiritual Frontier at the New Vrindavan temple. Srila Prabhupada heard about it, and Srila Prabhupada with Kirtananda came to to New Vrindavan to see the film with the devotees. So the devotees were sitting in the temple room, and they were watching the film. And Prabhupada was very, very happy with the film. At the end of the movie, after the movie finished, Srila Prabhupada started glorifying Kirtananda. And Kirtananda was sitting on the left-hand side of Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada looked at Kirtananda and he said, Kirtananda, I bless you. You will go back to Godhead this lifetime. And the devotees, they cheered, Jai Srila Prabhupada. Then Prabhupada said, what Kirtananda? That means, not only Kirtananda, what about, everybody else? Prabhupada then showed his palm, giving blessings from the full left. He started moving his hand across the temple, blessing everyone and saying, right to the right-hand side. Prabhupada moved his hand and blessed everyone, saying, I bless you all that you'll go back to Godhead. So this way, Srila Prabhupada really appreciated and was giving his full blessings. And no doubt those devotees that started supporting Srila Prabhupada in his early days, their lives are definitely perfected. So now we'll go through some of the excerpts from the Lilamrta and share some points on that. So this is a makeshift temple, August 1966. It was a makeshift, a storefront turned temple, and a 2-room apartment transformed into the Guru's residence and study. But it was complete nonetheless. It was a complete monastery amid the city slums. The temple, the storefront, was quickly becoming known among the hip underground of the Lower East Side. The courtyard was a strangely peaceful place for spring monks, with its little garden, bird sanctuary, and trees squeezed in between the front and the rear buildings. The Swami's back room was the inner sanctum of the monastery. Each room had a flavor of its own, or rather, it took on its particular character from the Swami's activities there. The temple room was his kirtan and lecture hall. The lecture was always serious and formal, even from the beginning, when there was no dais, that means no Vyasasan, and he had to sit on a straw mat facing the new guests. It was clear that he was here to instruct, not to invite casual give and take dialogue. Questions had to wait until he finished speaking. The audience would sit on the floor and listen for 45 minutes as he delivered the Vedic knowledge intact, always speaking on the basis of Vedic authority, quoting Sanskrit, quoting the previous spiritual masters, delivering perfect knowledge supported with reason and argument. While contending with the noises of the street, he lectured with exact scholarship and deeply committed devotion. It appeared that he had long ago mastered all the references and conclusions of his predecessors and had even come to anticipate all intellectual challenges. So the chapter starts very nicely setting the scene of 26 Second Avenue and explaining Srila Prabhupada's commitment and dedication and why he was actually there. It wasn't just to have a casual dialogue. Prabhupada was there on a mission to create a spiritual revolution in the hearts of the souls of this age of Kali Yuga. And what's interesting is Prabhupada never compromised in terms of giving Krishna consciousness. Even though these were, in the Western world, nobody had any clue about Sanskrit. But Prabhupada would speak quoting Sanskrit verses. He didn't feel that, no, I can't quote Sanskrit, let me just give it, in simple English, they'll understand. No, Prabhupada had firm faith in the power of the Vedas, the Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita and the sound vibration, the holy name. So therefore, Prabhupada gave Krishna consciousness in its pure, pristine format. And he knew that just the sound vibration would impact their lives, even if they did not, have any background or even understood Sanskrit. But Srila Prabhupada would quote, and that also gave Srila Prabhupada, people could sense that Prabhupada was speaking authoritatively, that he quoted the Vedic texts, verifying everything. In this regard, we know even in Nairobi, when Srila Prabhupada went to Nairobi, he asked the devotees to arrange a program. So they had arranged a program, and they had a program inviting many of the Gujaratis. And Prabhupada, chastised them. He said, I didn't come to Kenya to speak to the Gujaratis. I came to Kenya to speak to the Kenyans, the locals. So you please arrange a program for the locals. So the devotees had then arranged a program for the locals. The only challenge was many of the locals, practically nearly all the locals, never spoke English. So they never understood English. Yet, still they arranged a program. Prabhupada went to the whole program, and from the Vyasasana on the stage, Prabhupada spoke in English. And after Prabhupada had spoken, as soon as he ended his talk, all the guests stood up and started clapping in appreciation. And the devotees were wondering, why are they clapping? They couldn't understand a thing, yet they were clapping. So what allowed them to clap in appreciation was the fact that they understood what Srila Prabhupada was saying, not from a language perspective, from English language perspective, and that they could not understand, that they were using their ears to hear, but the fact that whatever Prabhupada is speaking went directly to their heart. Prabhupada was giving Krishna consciousness, and that Krishna consciousness penetrated directly to the heart, and they felt that, even though they couldn't understand, but they felt it. They felt that this is something special. This is what we're looking for, and therefore, in appreciation, they clapped. So Prabhupada had firm faith, and therefore he did not compromise. Intoxicating kirtans. It also held kirtans. He also held kirtans in a storefront. Like the lectures, the kirtans were serious, but they were not so formal. Prabhupada was lenient during kirtans. Visitors would bring harmoniums, wooden flutes, guitars, and they would follow the melody and create their own improvisations. Sometimes someone brought an old string bass and bow, and an inspired guest would always pick up the bow and play along. Some of the boys had found the innards of an upright piano waiting on the curb with someone's garbage, and they had brought it to the temple and placed it near the entrance. During a kirtan, freewheelers guests would run their hands over the wires, creating strange vibrations. Robert Nelson, several weeks back, had brought a large cymbal and now hung from the ceiling, dangling close by the Swami's dais. But there was a limit to the extravagance. Sometimes when a newcomer picked up the cartels and played them in a beat other than the standard 1, 2, 3, Swamiji would ask one of the boys to correct him, even at the risk of offending the guest. Prabhupada led the chanting and drummed with one hand on a small bongo. Even on this little bongo drum, he played Bengali mridanga rhythms so interestingly that a local Congo drummer used to come just to hear. Quote, the Swami gets in some good licks, unquote. The Swami's kirtans were a new high, and the boys would glance at each other with widening eyes and shaking heads as responding to his chanting, comparing it to their previous drug experience, signaling each other favorably. This is great. It's better than LSD. Hey man, I'm really getting high on this. And Prabhupada encouraged the newfound intoxication. So the kirtan, no doubt, was a winner. Prabhupada transporting the devotees into these new devotees into the spiritual world by his devotionally surcharged kirtan. Prabhupada makes it very clear that kirtan is not for entertainment. Kirtan is meant to attract the attention of Krishna. Kirtan is meant for glorification of Krishna. Kirtan is meant for the pleasure of Krishna. So Prabhupada was always chanting with that as the foundation, that as the basis. And Prabhupada had a certain standard, a standard that he wanted to establish for the future of Krishna consciousness. One time, Prabhupada was sitting and giving a talk, and one devotee asked Srila Prabhupada about how to dance and kirtan. And Prabhupada was a picture of Lord Chaitanya and Sankirtan party. And Prabhupada said, just like that, just like how Srijat Mahaprabhu came, we should follow in his footsteps. So here we find Prabhupada encouraging, initially Prabhupada encouraged all the different instruments that people would bring. They could use that. But as the movement started maturing and more devotees started joining, then Prabhupada started giving more and more guidance on what was acceptable in the temple room and what could be used outside. And in the temple room, Prabhupada made it very clear, mridanga and kartals, that's sufficient in the temple room. And harmonium can be played for bhajans, but not during arati. And outside, you could use other instruments to attract the people in the public, but generally Prabhupada encouraged mridanga and kartals were sufficient. And here we see Prabhupada also very particular about the 1-2-3 beat. Srila Prabhupada, he was very sensitive to each individual and wasn't there to chase people. But Prabhupada was also concerned about the movement, and therefore when somebody started introducing something that was not appropriate, Prabhupada was not shy to stop the kirtans. Here he's correcting the guest to play properly 1-2-3. Otherwise, what happens? It becomes a standard, and that standard then goes over generations and generations. So Prabhupada wanted to establish the standard of the special beat 1-2-3 that he introduced, the dancing that we're going to hear about Srila Prabhupada introducing. Otherwise, it distorts the flavor that Srila Prabhupada wanted his movement to have. Just in this regard, even there's many other things we can share, even in terms of what we chant. Srila Prabhupada was very particular about chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, not adding or subtracting. Just like if you add, chant Hare Krishna or bhaja Hare Krishna, Prabhupada at one time stopped Guru Puja, flattened its tracks because the devotee had added bhaja Hare Krishna. And Prabhupada stopped the devotee and chastising. Did I teach you this? And why did Prabhupada do that? Because this generation will add bhaja Hare Krishna. Then next generation, they'll chant Hare Krishna. And next generation, they'll say, oh, chant Hare Krishna. And then, they'll start adding. By the time few generations, the whole mantra is completely distorted. So we have to be very, very, careful in terms of following Prabhupada wanted us to, especially in the kirtans. Then open door policy. But this same back room was also used for meetings, and anyone who brought himself to knock on the Swami's door could enter and speak with him at any time, face to face. Prabhupada would sit back from his typewriter and give his time to talking, listening, answering questions, sometimes arguing or joking. A visitor might sit alone with him for half an hour before someone else would knock, and Swamiji would invite the newcomer to join them. New guests would come and others would go, but Swamiji stayed and sat and talked. Generally, visits were formal. His guests would ask philosophical questions and he would answer, much the same as after a lecture in the storefront. But occasionally, some of the boys who were becoming serious followers would monopolize his time, especially on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday and Sunday nights, when there was no evening lecture in the temple. Often they would ask him personal questions. What was it when he first came to New York? What about India? Did he have followers there? Were his family members devotees of Krishna? What was his spiritual master like? and then Prabhupada would talk in different ways, quieter, more intimate, and humorous. So as mentioned, the top second floor, that's the 3 windows on the left. That was Srila Prabhupada's personal room. So the point here is Srila Prabhupada was very personal. He gave time to these devotees, even though he's the world Acharya, not even just the world Acharya, not even just the universal Acharya. He is the Senapati, chief Senapati of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's army. His position is super excellent, so very exalted. And these people were practically coming from the lowest part of this age of Kali Yuga, the lower east side. All they knew was sex, rock and roll, and LSD. And yet Prabhupada had time for them. Why? Because he saw these souls that were coming to him were sent to him by his own spiritual master. And therefore, he gave his time as much as was required to help them in their Krishna consciousness. The most powerful weapon. Prabhupada says, prasadam is our most powerful weapon. This Hare Krishna movement is also the kitchen religion. At first, Keith had cooked only for Swami, and he had mastered the art of cooking dal, rice, and sabji in Swami's 3-tiered boiler. And usually there had been enough for 1 or 2 guests as well. But soon more guests had begun to gather, and Prabhupada told Keith to increase the quantity, abandoning the small 3-tier cooker, until he was cooking for a dozen hungry men. The boarders, Raphael and Don, though not so interested in Swami's talk, would arrive punctually each day for prasadam, usually with a friend or 2 who had wandered into the storefront. Steve would drop by from his job at the welfare office, and Mott Street group would come, and there were others. The kitchen was stocked with the standard Indian spices: fresh chilies, fresh ginger root, whole cumin seeds, turmeric, and asafoetida. Keith mastered the basic cooking techniques and passed them on to Chuck, who became his assistant. Some of the other boys would stand at the doorway of the narrow kitchenette to watch Keith as one thick pancake-like chapati after another blew up like an inflated football over the open flame, and then took its place in the steaming stack. While the fine basmati rice boiled to a moist, fluffy white finish, and the sabji simmered, the noon cooking would climax with the chants. Keith prepared the chants exactly as Swamiji had shown him. Over the flame, he had set a small metal cup, half filled with clarified butter, then put in cumin seeds. When the seeds turned almost black, he added chilies, and as the chilies blackened, a choking smoke began to pour from the cup. Now the chants was ready. With his cook's tongs, Keith lifted the cup, its boiling, crackling mixture fuming like a sorcerer's kettle, and brought it to the edge of the pot of the boiling dal. He opened the tight cover slightly, dumped the boiling chants into the dal with a flick of his twist, and immediately replaced the lid. Pow! The meeting of the chants and the dal created an explosion, which was greeted by cheers from the doorway, signifying that the cooking was now complete. This final operation was so volatile that it once blew the top of the pot to the ceiling with a loud smash, causing minor burns to Keith's hand. Some of the neighbors complained of the acrid, penetrating fumes, but the devotees loved it. So Prabhupada was very particular about the prasadam distribution. He taught Keith how to cook specifically, and Keith started becoming the main support in the kitchen, cooking and supporting Srila Prabhupada with the feast. Prabhupada would cook the Sunday feast himself. And here Prabhupada, in a conversation on the farm on December 10, 1976 in Hyderabad, Prabhupada is talking about those days. You'll see a picture here of the chapatis that they would actually, Keith and Prabhupada would cook a stack of chapatis. So Prabhupada is speaking to devotees. He's saying, but attract them. talking about prasadam. They will come here to eat. Oh, very nice thing. This is wanted. I made this movement successful simply by love feast. They did not come to hear Hare Krishna. They came for love feast. From the very beginning, when I was in 26 Second Avenue, every Sunday, I was giving foodstuff, at least 200 men. Daily, at least more than 15, 20, I was cooking myself. This is the beginning of my movement. The chapatis with Kirtananda. First of all, he was taking 1 and 2, then 12 after. There was another boy. Then the devotee says, Striya Disha, Prabhupada, Striya Disha, 22 chapatis, Prabhupada laughs. Striya Disha, can I give you? Yes, I gave him 4, finished. Striya Disha, yeah, I give you. Yes, laughter. Very nice boy. He was eating 22. One day there was no money. So he immediately went, came after some time with some money. And where did you go? The shoe booth. He polished shoes, brought some money, laughter. In this way, this was developed. Give them prasad, nice prasad. Any gentleman comes, immediately there must be some prasadam. Engage first-class cook. Spend money, don't be miserly. If you have no money, I will pay. So we can see Prabhupada encouraging the devotees. Prasadam distribution is as integral part of the Krishna conscious movement and our preaching mission. And the next part of the conversation, Prabhupada, we can appreciate Prabhupada's seriousness of this. Prabhupada says, don't be miserly. So long I am living, I shall go on paying. You don't be miserly. Bring devotees for eating, then chanting, then cinema, then lecture. In this way, you have to develop. Not that people will come. Hare Krishna mantra is there. Let us go there. They will not come. What do they know about Hare Krishna? They will come. Oh, there is nice, good prasad distribution. Mahamsa. Some people I know, they said that yesterday the prasad was not nice. And there was, Prabhupada says, not nice. It is not eatable even for the dogs. But you are less than dogs if you prepare such things. I was surprised. You allowed a sweeper to cook. I was surprised. You have distribution prasad, not dog's food. Such rascals as here. You do not know. I do not wish to discuss any more on this point. You have murdered the whole thing in 2 days. Now, if possible, bring them. Bring them first-class prasad, very palatable. Foodstuffs mean even one has no appetite, he'll eat. That is food. Not that even one has got appetite, he'll forget. That is not good. So do like that. And for money, produce. Use cane, sugar cane, rice. We shall spend for that. Don't spoil money, but do it like businessmen. So Prabhupada was very particular. Prasadam must be first class and sufficient. Prabhupada always was feeding the devotees. Sunday feast, lunch, Prabhupada would give them more and more and more. Take more, take more. He was never miserly. Here we see the devotees chanting kirtan in the front of the shop. Srila Prabhupada's tolerance. Dawn was a test of Srila Prabhupada's tolerance. He had lived in the storefront for months, working little and not trying to change his habits. He had a remarkable speech affectation. Instead of talking, he enunciated each word, his words, as if he were reciting them from a book. And he never used contractions. It wasn't that he was intellectual, just that somehow he had developed a plan to abolish his natural dialect. Don's speech struck people as bizarre, like it might be the result of too many drugs. It gave him the air of being not an ordinary being, and he continuously took marijuana. Even after Swamiji had asked those who lived with him not to. Sometimes during the day, his girlfriend would join him in the storefront, and they would sit together, talking intimately and sometimes kissing. But he liked the Swami. He gave some money once. He even gave some money once. He liked living in the storefront, and Swami didn't complain, but others did. One day, an interesting newcomer dropped by the storefront and found Don alone, surrounded by the sharp aroma of marijuana. You've been smoking pot, but the Swami doesn't want anyone smoking here. Don denied it. I have not been smoking. You are not speaking the truth. The boy then reached in Don's shirt pocket and pulled out a joint, and Don hit him in the face. Several of the boys found out. They were not sure what was right. What would the Swami do? What do you do if someone smokes pot, even though a devotee was not supposed to? Could it be allowed sometimes? They put the matter before Swamiji. Prabhupada took it very seriously, and he was upset, especially about the violence. You hit him? He hit you? He asked the boy. I will go down myself and kick him in the head. But then Prabhupada thought about it and said that Don should be asked to leave. But Don had already left. The next morning during Swamiji's class, Don appeared at the front door. From his dais, Swamiji looked out at Don with great concern. But his first concern was for ISKCON. Ask him, Prabhupada requested Roy, who sat nearby. If he has marijuana, then he cannot come in our society. Prabhupada was like an anxious father, afraid of the life of his infant ISKCON. Roy went to the door and told Don he would have to give up his drugs if he entered, and Don walked away. So here we find Srila Prabhupada had to tolerate such situations. This is one Prabhupada had to go through so many. And what's particularly interesting in this specific situation was Prabhupada was concerned about his infant ISKCON. And Prabhupada knew that if he does not lay the proper foundation for the society at this point in time, then it will not grow up to be the movement that he desired and dreamt of. So therefore, Prabhupada did everything that he could to make sure that the society was intact, both from a managerial perspective, from a continuation perspective, from the perspective of purity. In every aspect, Prabhupada made sure that he tried to establish ISKCON in the most wonderful way. Another example, Stanley had been going off the deep end for some time, and now he became even more abstracted in his behavior. Stanley's mother knew her son had been in trouble for years, and she had therefore requested Prabhupada to keep a very close watch on him. But now the boy deteriorated in his responsibilities and stopped cleaning the kitchen and storefront. He would stand alone looking at something. He was gloomy and sometimes spoke of suicide, and he stopped chanting regularly. The boy didn't know what to do, but they thought perhaps he should be sent home to his mother. One day, Stanley went up to see Swami. He came in and sat down. Prabhupada, yes? Stanley, may I have $50? Prabhupada, why? Prabhupada used to handle all the money himself. So when his boys needed something, even if it were only 25 cents for the bus, they had to see Swami. He was never wasteful. He was so frugal that whenever he received a letter, he would carefully tear the envelope apart and use the reverse side as writing paper. So he wanted to know why Stanley wanted $50. Stanley replied in a small voice, I want to purchase some gasoline and set myself on fire. Robert saw Chuck at the doorway and told him to call Bruce at once. Bruce quickly came up and sat with Prabhupada and Stanley. Prabhupada told Bruce, whom he had recently appointed to handle the petty cash, to give Stanley $50, and he had Stanley repeat what he wanted the money, why he wanted the money. But Swamiji, Bruce protested, we don't have that much money. There, you see, Stanley, Prabhupada spoke very calmly. Bruce says, we don't have the money. Then they phoned Stanley's mother. Later, Prabhupada said that because Stanley had asked for $50 for gasoline, which cost only 35 cents, he could therefore understand Stanley was Crazy. So Prabhupada had to deal with this, but here we see Prabhupada was very intelligent. Prabhupada was, he was sharp. He could immediately detect, he knew what things cost. Prabhupada had a record of everything. Prabhupada was very meticulous. And here we see how Prabhupada could, he even knew what the gasoline's cost would be. And therefore he could immediately decode and understand that Stanley was actually crazy and lying. Our process is to reform, not to reject. And so here's another example of Prabhupada tolerating. Bill abstained, took pride in his relationship with Swami. It was honest. Although he helped the Swami by telling people about him and sending them up to see him in his apartment, he felt the Swami knew he'd never become a serious follower. Nor did Bill ever mislead himself into thinking he would ever be serious. But Prabhupada wasn't content with Bill's take it or leave it attitude. When Bill would finally show up at the storefront again after spending some days at a friend's place, only to fall asleep with a blanket wrapped over his head during the lecture, Prabhupada would just start shouting so loud that Bill couldn't sleep. Sometimes Bill would ask a challenging question, and Prabhupada would answer and then say, "Are you satisfied?" And Bill would look up dreamingly and answer, "No." Then Prabhupada would answer it again more fully and say louder, "Are you satisfied?" And again, Bill would say, "No." This would go on until Bill would have to give in. Yes, I'm satisfied. But Bill was the first person to get up and dance during a kirtan in the storefront. Some of the other boys thought he looked like he was dancing in an egotistical, narcissistic way, even though his arms were outstretched in the facsimile of the picture of Lord Chaitanya. But when Swamiji saw Bill dancing like that, he looked at Bill with wide open eyes and feelingly expressed appreciation. Bill is dancing just like Lord Chaitanya. So Prabhupada was very compassionate. And Prabhupada once told Garga Muni that our process is to reform, not to reject. Garga Muni one time, Garga Muni Prabhu one time when he was in San Francisco, then Jai Tirtha joined, and Jai Tirtha was completely drugged, and he asked Srila Prabhupada what to do, because he was drugged and he would speak to people. Anyone that would come, he would start speaking nonsense to them because he was totally drugged. And the guests didn't appreciate it. So Prabhupada told him that we're not here to reject people, we're here to reform. So he gave a formula to Garga Muni Prabhu. He said, you keep him you don't let him go out on Sankirtan, you keep him in a room, and what I want you to do is let him chant whole day and feed him prasad whole day. That's all. And you keep an watch on him, let him chant whole day and feed him practically whole day, every now and then. So that is what Garga Muni did. He cooked nice feast and he started feeding. He said, Prabhupada wants you to sit here and chant. He gave him some incense to pack and told him he must chant Hare Krishna and pack this incense. And regularly he would feed him prasad, nice prasad. And this went on for a few days. And sure enough, he got cured. So Prabhupada was into reforming and not rejecting. Here we see the guests coming. Initially, it was 5 people, then 10 people, then 20, and slowly it picked up. People would come to this wonderful matchless gift temple. After their first visit to the storefront, Chuck, Steve, and Bruce each got an opportunity to see Swami upstairs in his apartment. So Steve, he was one of the first devotees that were actually working. Most of the others were not, they didn't have jobs. Steve was actually working. And during his lunch hour, he decided to visit Srila Prabhupada. So he shares his experience. I was on my lunch hour and had to be back in the office very soon. I was dressed in a summer business suit. I had planned it so that I had just enough time to go to the storefront and buy some books, then go to lunch and return to work. At the storefront, one of Swami's followers said that I could go up and see the Swami. I went upstairs to his apartment and found him at his sitting place with a few boys. I must have interrupted what he was saying, but I asked him if I could purchase 3 volumes of Srimad Bhagavatam. One of the devotees produced the books from the closet opposite Prabhupada's seat. I handled the books. They were a very special color, not usually seen in America, a reddish natural earth, like a brick, and And I asked him how much they cost. $6 each, he said. I took $20 out of my wallet and gave it to him. He seemed the only one to ask about the price of books or give money to, because none of the others came forward to represent him. They were just sitting back and listening to him speak. These books are commentaries on the scriptures, I asked, trying to show that I knew something about books. Swamiji said, yes, they were his commentaries, sitting and smiling at ease. Swamiji was very attractive. He seemed very strong and healthy. When he smiled, all his teeth were beautiful and his nostrils flared aristocratically. His face was full and powerful. He was wearing an Indian cloth robe and he sat cross-legged. His smooth skin legs were partly exposed. He wore no shirt. The upper part of his body was wrapped with an Indian cloth shawl. His limbs were quite slender, but he had a protruding belly. When I saw the Swami was having to personally handle the sale of the books, I did not want to bother him. I quickly asked him to please keep the change for my $20. I took 3 volumes without any bag and wrapping and was standing, preparing to leave when Swamiji said, sit down. The gesture that I should sit opposite him like the others. He had said, sit down, in a different tone of voice. It was a heavy tone and indicated that now the sale of the books was completed and I should sit down with the others and listen to him speak. He was offering me an important invitation to become like one of the others, who I knew spent many hours with him during the day when I was usually at my job and not able to come. I envied their leisure in being able to learn so much. I envied their leisure in being able to learn so much from him and sit and talk intimately with him. By ending the sale transaction and asking me to sit, he assumed that I was in need of listening to him and that I had nothing better in this world to do than to stop everything else and hear him. But I was expected back at the office. I didn't want to argue, but I couldn't possibly stay. I'm sorry, I have to go, I said definitely. I'm only on my lunch hour. As I said this, I had already started to move for the door, and Swamiji responded by suddenly breaking into a wide smile, looking very charmingly and very happy. He seemed to appreciate that I was a working man, a young man on the go. I had not come by simply because I was unemployed and had nowhere to go and nothing to do. Approving my energetic demeanor, he allowed me to take my leave. So Prabhupada was philosophical and personal. Here's 2 examples of where Prabhupada was philosophical. Chuck, I asked him, can you teach me Raj Yoga? So we know Chuck was the Hatha Yoga, he was practicing Hatha Yoga. So he asked Prabhupada, can you teach me Raja Yoga? Oh, he said, here's Bhagavad Gita. He handed me a copy of the Gita, turned to the last verse of the 6th chapter, he said, and read. I read the translation out loud. Of all yogis, he who is worshipping me with faith and devotion, I consider to be the best. I could not comprehend what faith and devotion meant. So I said, sometimes I'm getting some light in my forehead. That is hallucination, he said. So abruptly, he said it, although he did not strain his person. The words came at me so intense that it completely shocked me. Raja means king, and Raja means king yoga, he said. But this is emperor yoga. One time, another girl was also chanting, and she told Swamiji, when I chant, I see a green light. And Prabhupada said, no problem, keep chanting, it'll go away. Because people, they wanted these different experiences of seeing light, having mystical experiences, and that's why they wanted to take LSD to try to experience these different experiences. Steve, I wanted to show my appreciation for spiritual India, so I presented to Swamiji that I had read the autobiography of Gandhi. It was glorious, I said. What is glorious about it? Swamiji challenged. When he asked this, there were others present in the room. Although I was a guest, he had no qualms about challenging me for having said something foolish. I searched through my remembrance of Gandhi's autobiography to answer his challenging question. What is glorious? I began to relate that one time Gandhi as a child, although raised as a vegetarian, was induced by some of his friends to eat meat. And that night he felt that a lamb was howling in his belly. Swamiji dismissed this at once, saying, most of India is vegetarian. That is not glorious. I couldn't think of anything else glorious to say. And Swamiji said, his autobiography is called Experiments of the Truth, but that is not the nature of the truth. It is not to be found by someone's experimenting. Truth is always truth. So we can see Prabhupada was very philosophical, and Prabhupada would be challenging. He would not just take anything that people would say. But at the same time, even though Prabhupada was very philosophical, he was very personal. Here's an example of Prabhupada's personal touch. I had come by in the afternoon, and Swamiji had given me a plate of prasad. So I was eating, and a chili burned my mouth. Swamiji said, is it too hot? Yes, I said. So he brought me a tiny teacup with some milk, and then he took some rice off my plate, took a piece of banana, crushed it up together with his finger and said, here, eat this. It will kill the actions of the chilies. So here's the storefront now. The devotees had purchased it and they renovated it. And now the devotees have regular programs there. The Swami Step. This was at the Ananda Ashram. Then he led the kirtan that breached all the differences and brought out the best in everyone that night. Several nights before, in his apartment on 2nd Avenue, Prabhupada had taught his followers how to dance. They had formed a line behind him while he demonstrated a simple step. Holding his arm above his head, he would first swing his left foot forward across the right foot and then bring it back again in the sweeping motion. Then he would swing his right foot over the left and bring it back. With his arms raised, Prabhupada would walk forward, swinging his body from side to side, left foot to right foot to the left side. In this, in time with the 1-2-3 rhythm. He had shown them the step in regular time and in slow, half-time rhythm. Keith had called it the Swami Step, and as if it were a new ballroom dance. So Prabhupada taught them the famous Swami Step. This was the first dance step that Prabhupada showed them. Then Prabhupada introduced the jumping step, where Prabhupada would jump in kirtan. That also is a wonderful pastime. And these were the two main steps. The devotees also go in circles, but these were the two main steps that Prabhupada appreciated devotees using and dancing for the pleasure of Krishna. The Peace Vigil. The New York Post ran a picture of Swamiji's group at the United Nations. This is where we see this is actual picture of Prabhupada sitting and chanting, because Prabhupada started chanting kirtan, and they said, no, this is a silent vigil. So then Prabhupada sat down and had chanted for 2 hours, japa. Steve brought the clipping into Prabhupada, to Prabhupada. Swamiji, look, they have referred to you as Semi-Krishna. Prabhupada, Semi-Krishna, that's all right. In the picture, some of the boys were sitting with their heads resting on their arms. Where are you? Prabhupada asked. Steve pointed. Oh, you chant like this with your head down? That means he was also sleeping. All right, so I've got a few more slides, and I'll try to just conclude. I won't read through, consideration of the time. So Keith was the only one that really asked Srila Prabhupada the first time if he could become his disciple, and Prabhupada said, yes, why not? And then Prabhupada said he will have initiation. This is actually the picture of Prabhupada conducting the first initiation. Okay. And then during the initiation, in Janmashtami, Srila Prabhupada started speaking about initiation. And Prabhupada said in the middle of the paragraph I'm reading, and now he said at length, I will tell you what is meant by initiation. Initiation means that the spiritual master accepts the student and agrees to take charge. and the student accepts the spiritual master and agrees to worship him as God. He paused. No one spoke. Any questions? And when there were none, he got up and walked out. The devotees were stunned. They had just heard him. What they have just heard him say. For weeks, he had stressed, when anyone claimed to be God, he should be considered dog. My mind just been blown, said Wally. Everyone's mind is blown, said Howard. Swamiji just dropped a bomb. And then they went to Keith and they explained to Keith, and Keith then explained that actually you've already given your life to Srila Prabhupada. You're already accepting everything he says. And then they went to Srila Prabhupada to clarify. And then Prabhupada says that actually, Prabhupada says that means he's due the same respect as God, being God's representative. Then he's not God? No, Prabhupada said. God is God. The spiritual master is his representative. Therefore, he is as good as God because he can deliver God to the sincere disciple. Is that clear? Yes, it was clear. Prabhupada initiated 11 disciples on the first initiation ever. And they all had to, Prabhupada didn't really give them the rules. They had to ask after the initiation, and then Prabhupada told them the 4 regular principles. These were the initiates. After Wali received his beads and his new name, Umapati, he returned to his place besides Howard and said, that was wonderful. Getting your beads is wonderful. They had to string their own beads, 108 beads. Prabhupada taught them how to make their own beads. In turn, each initiate received his beads and his spiritual name. Howard became Hayagriva. Wali became Umapati. Bill became Ravindra Swarup. Carl became Kalapati. James became Jagannath. Mike became Mukunda. Jen became Janaki. Roy became Raya Ram. Stanley became Satyada Disha. Another Stanley, a Brooklyn boy with a job, and Janice, a college student from Montreal, both of whom had rather peripheral relationship with the Swami, appeared that night and took initiation, with the rest receiving the names Satyavrata and Janardhan. So these were the first 11 initiated disciples. Then the final part of this chapter covers the first Krishna conscious wedding. The next day after the initiation, Mukunda and Janaki comes to see Srila Prabhupada. And then Prabhupada says, so you all staying together? And they said, yes. And Prabhupada says, well, then you should get married. And they agreed. And Prabhupada said he will arrange their marriage, and they should invite the family, and he will cook a feast. So they invited the family, but the family was very far away, and only Janaki's sister, Joan, agreed to come. So Prabhupada actually cooked the feast, personally cooked the feast with Janaki's sister, who then later became initiated as Mother Yamuna. And it's interesting, here's a recipe. Swamiji brought in 15 special vegetarian dishes, each one in large enough quantity for 40 persons. He had made them single-handedly in his small, narrow kitchen. And in this wonderful book, Miracles on 2nd Avenue by Mukunda Goswami, there's a description of the preparations that he made. Spicy rice with chunks of homemade cheese and red pepper, sweet and sour dal, richly spiced chickpea stew, curried potatoes with peas and eggplant dumplings in yogurt, sauce sprinkled with coriander leaves and fresh ground spices, whole wheat fried flat bread, deep fried cauliflower fritters, flaky potato pastry, chunky tomato chutney, spongy paneer globes floating in the sauce of condensed milk, and squares of milk fudge. And this is the conclusion of this chapter. Back at his apartment, Prabhupada so after the wedding, so the feast was a hit, the wedding went successful, and then back in his apartment, Prabhupada, along with few helpers, cleaned up after the ceremony. He was satisfied. He was introducing some of the major elements of his Krishna conscious mission. He had initiated disciples, he had married them, and he had feasted the public with Krishna Prasad. And then Prabhupada makes this amazing remark. If I had the means, he told his followers, I could hold a major festival like this every day. And I thought that was such a powerful conclusion to this chapter, revealing the inner mood of Srila Prabhupada, that if Prabhupada had the means, he would not wait for Janmashtami and some other, appearance festival day. No, every day Prabhupada would cook, like having a Sunday feast, 15 preparations every single day. This is the standard we should desire to come to. Wonderful kirtan, wonderful prasad, amazing philosophy, being personal with the guest and giving them a wonderful experience. And this is the last slide. Just some of the wonderful statements in this chapter are from Srila Prabhupada. A few Ananda Ashram men and women came by. One woman was wearing a sari. Prabhupada turned to the other woman and said, a woman who wears a sari looks very feminine. The sun rose over the mountains, streaking the morning sky above the lake with colors. Wally and Keith were walking around the grounds, saying to Prabhupada how beautiful it was. We are not so concerned with beautiful scenery, said Srila Prabhupada. We are concerned with the beautiful one who has made a beautiful scenery. It is better for spiritual realization. Is it better for spiritual realization to meditate in the mountains? Bruce asked. Prabhupada replied, this is nonsense. There is no question of better place. Are you thinking that God is up on some planet and something that you have to go up high? No, you can meditate anywhere. Just chant Hare Krishna. But Swami went on pouring the remaining butter and seeds into the fire. This kind of smoke does not disturb, he said. Other smoke disturbs, but this kind of smoke does not disturb. And this was during the fire initiation ceremony. As the ceremony was finished and the air in the apartment was clearing, Swamiji began to laugh. There was so much smoke, I thought they might have to call the fire brigade. And finally, concluding, Prabhupada also spoke of the necessity of purification for spiritual advancement. It is not enough merely to chant the holy names, he said. One must be pure inside and out. Chanting in purity brings spiritual advancement. The living entity becomes impure because he wants to enjoy material pleasure. But the impure can become pure by following Krishna, by doing all the work for Krishna. Beginners in Krishna consciousness have a tendency to relax their efforts in a short time. But to advance spiritually, one must resist this temptation and continually increase your efforts and devotion. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So here's the last few pictures. This is now currently the 26 Second Avenue inside. They naturally, painted and renovated. And this is the temple outside. Thank you very much for your time. Sorry, got a little 3 minutes over time.
Wow. So thank you so much, Ru, for this really heart touching, wonderful, super excellent presentation. Actually, I've been trying to find ways and means to really express myself. So I'm really happy to have you tonight with us. I would thank His Grace Ajay Chaitanya and Vidura Prabhu for being the person who arranged for that. That's a wonderful gift for our 7th week, and we hope to have you more often here. So without much saying, I would request devotees who wishes to ask any question or any comment to please click on their virtual hand, and you will be allowed to unmute and definitely pass your comment or question. Anyone? So we have one hand up here. We have J. Chaitanya Prabhu. Please unmute and you can ask your question, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Krishna, once again, thank you. As
Thank you.
said, while knowing you, I know which type of presentation will come. It was fantastic. Well, do you have time for questions, Prabhu? This is my
Yes, please.
question.
Sure.
Okay. Well, yes, I wanted to confirm. You already confirmed it in the clause that now ISKCON has taken possession of this we can say storefront, 22nd
Yes.
Avenue. and you're running by ISKCON. One aspect which I really wanted to understand better, like all those devotees who have been helping Srila Prabhupada in the early days, right? As you said, they serve Srila Prabhupada to enable Srila Prabhupada to serve his own spiritual master. But unfortunately, some left, and perhaps even during Srila Prabhupada's time, right? So just, I want to know, they played such a, if had they not been there at that time, we would not be here. They worked so hard. So what is there something we can do for these people, who have worked so hard, and for one reason or the other, they left the association of devotees or something like that?
So the movement generally evolves, and different devotees, different disciples of Srila Prabhupada, early disciples, may have left for different reasons. And due to the different reasons, we may be able to do certain things in our limited capacity, but also it's more, let's say, because of in an institution, it may be an institutional responsibility. From our individual perspective, we should always see them as special servants of Srila Prabhupada. And, for example, Prabhupada mentioned that even, if one of his disciples, even if you saw him smoking, still you should offer obeisances. So, Prabhupada appreciated their efforts, and we should see them in that light and also appreciate their contribution. And the way we should see them leaving is simply, they are going, there's a leave of absence. So they're just temporarily taking a leave of absence, and then they'll most definitely come back. If we see, for example, Shyam Sundar Prabhu, he also left.
Yeah.
And he practically wanted to forget Krishna. And he mentioned how Prabhupada would come in his dream and with his stick, chastise him. So he was having nightmares. Even though he was trying to leave Krishna, the more he was trying to leave Krishna, the more Krishna and Prabhupada were coming into his life. And eventually he had to come back. Now he's completely fixed. So, very temporarily people may go and, they may come back. And even if they go and they don't come back, Prabhupada's glance over them is rest assured. There was another disciple of Srila Prabhupada, and we know that when the souls would leave, when the devotees would leave the temple, Prabhupada would be crying, Prabhupada would tearing, because he didn't want anyone to leave. Right? But circumstances may, force them for whatever reason. One devotee, he left, and a Prabhupada disciple, and he counteracted AIDS, and he was embarrassed to come. While he was leaving, he was embarrassed to come back into the society because it's uncomfortable. So while he was leaving his body in hospital, he was in a coma, and the doctors were considering, to switch off the machine, etc. And at one point, he just sat up, straight, and he said, "Oh, Prabhupada, you've come," and he fell down and left. So Prabhupada would never leave these souls; it's guaranteed. And therefore, and from our perspective, we can, we should always keep, the doors open, no matter what, whatever they did, we should always have the door open and try to, welcome them in the society, no matter what happens.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bro, for this wonderful answer. And yes, we have to keep the doors opened. Very true. So we have also Mataji Devika who rose her hand. Mataji, can you please unmute and ask your question? I can feel the nectar is flowing, So thank you. Devika Mataji, please. Here you go. Mataji Devika, you have to unmute, else you won't be able to ask your question. I think she's not here. So we will ask His Grace Vidura Prabhu to please.
I'm here, Prabhuji.
Okay.
Sorry,
Right.
got a problem just now.
No
Hare
problem.
Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
I am wondering the caliber of Prabhupada. Just imagine how frightening it was to preach with those people. With your film, the one you showed at first, usually when I was reading, I could imagine how it was. But viewing the film, it was really horrible, so frightening. And yet Prabhupada was there, discussing with them, making them a devotee like they are today. Very frightening it was, but also very encouraging. Yeah. My point of view is that even for Suhu, the same thing, no? Where Prabhupada went to preach among the prostitutes, the place where it is actually, if it is actually like this nowadays, how it was in the past. Because I remember each time when I go with my son in UK, in Soho, my son just gets annoyed with me. Mama, how can you come here? Why Prabhupada chose such a place to start his mission? Why such a place? And just imagine at first how it was. So Prabhupada was just amazing. His Kaliba Swami is just unbelievable.
Yes. And it's true. Now, why did Prabhupada go to New York? Prabhupada, in different classes answers that question. Prabhupada says one time he said, my spiritual master sent my godbrothers to London. So I didn't want to go back to London. And he wanted to go to a new place. So then he decided, okay, New York, because everyone, that time America was like the emblem of the world. Whatever America did, the rest would follow. So Prabhupada said, if I go to America, and in fact, in few lectures, Prabhupada says that he thanks America for receiving him and allowing him to spread Krishna consciousness. And from America, practically the whole world now has Krishna consciousness. If it wasn't for America, we wouldn't be in this situation. So Prabhupada thanks the disciples from America that supported him. Prabhupada also, it's interesting, he could have taken it easy and just have gone to some state in India, a new village in India, somewhere else, or even go where some congregation was. But Prabhupada, didn't do that. He actually went to a territory, a turf that was completely untouched. People would not even consider, sadhus would not even consider going to these people. Just like when you're doing books, right? You see, okay, this person looks like a beggar. No, I don't approach him. This person looks like he got money. Let me approach him. But Prabhupada went to these people that were not even considered to give spirituality. Many Swamis went from America, from India to America. In fact, there was a gathering of Swamis of India, and they invited Prabhupada. When Prabhupada went to that gathering in America of all the Swamis from India, he was the only Swami dressed as a Vaishnav with Vaishnav attire. Everybody else had, like a shirt and trousers, pants. And they told Prabhupada in that meeting, Swamiji, if you want to preach in America, you have to wear shirt and pants. You have to dress like them, right? You have to learn fork and knife. You have to eat like them. Otherwise, they will never listen to what you say. And Prabhupada immediately knew that he's in the wrong crowd, and he left. So, and Prabhupada says, I didn't go to the West to take on the culture of the West. I went to the West to give them Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada always thought big. When he went to the Ananda Ashram, there was an island they had a lake, and in the lake they had an island. And Prabhupada was telling the disciples that actually Dr. Mishra wants me to build a temple on this island. So the devotees asked Prabhupada, what temple you want to build? What size? Prabhupada says, And this is like they said, does the size? Prabhupada said, no, the size of the horizon. So that was Prabhupada's vision. He wanted something big, but he started it in a place that would practically be inconceivable for us to even consider. Yeah.
That's true.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we'll take a last question, Prabhu. I know it's late for you also.
Yeah, no problem.
Good. So we have His Grace Vidura Prabhu, whose hand is raised. So we'll ask Prabhu to please unmute and ask his question.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for the wonderful class, as usual.
Thank you.
Okay, so if we think about Tirtha, devotees go for India for Tirtha. Is the matchless gift a Tirtha? And what are they doing there now?
Yes. So it's a Tirtha, no doubt. And that's why the devotees actually bought that place. So every place that Prabhupada visited is no doubt a Tirtha. And there's actually a chronological dated sequence of what had happened to that temple. Because they left in 1968. And then that temple became another shop, and then people, they obviously didn't take care of it, and slowly it started breaking down. Then the devotees, got the temple, but they had to pay rent. So slowly, over time, they generally, got it, and now it's no doubt a place where devotees can go visit. Even like Tompkins Square Park, that temple, the devotees can go visit. So no doubt it's a Tirtha. Wherever Srila Prabhupada put his lotus feet, that place is worshipable. In fact, they asked Srila Prabhupada. One time the devotees took the plane was delayed, so they were at the airport, and there was a girl in a miniskirt that walked past. So then the one devotee told Srila Prabhupada, I'm sorry, this is not Vrindavan. Because the girl with the miniskirt walked past. And Prabhupada said, not Vrindavan. This is Vrindavan. And Prabhupada began to explain that when it's Vrindavan, because you carry Vrindavan in your heart. And if you carry Vrindavan in your heart, then wherever you are, that is Vrindavan. So Srila Prabhupada, no doubt, he carried Vrindavan in his heart to New York. Therefore, Prabhupada doesn't say, I came to New York. Because wherever he was, he's Vrindavan. It's the spiritual world. And that's how he saw it. So therefore, wherever Srila Prabhupada walked, he was bringing Vrindavan and making Vrindavan all over the world. And therefore, every single place is a Tirtha. And we can worship that place. And that is why, and every temple that Prabhupada established is the spiritual world. Therefore, sometimes we may be in a situation like now, for example, because of the current world situation, we may not be able to go to Vrindavan. No problem. You got your own temples in different locations. That is the holy dham. Prabhupada said they are non-different from the spiritual world. So if we go into these temples, we are in the spiritual world already. Yeah, we don't need to go further. We don't need to look further. Yeah, and we have the opportunity to render service in these wonderful temples, all by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bose, for this wonderful opportunity to share Srila Prabhupada's glories. We definitely will see you again with the next chapter allocated by Ajay Chaitanya Prabhu.
So thank you so much, Prabhu. Again, before we end, we have two messages I would like to read. We have them from Bafana iPad. I don't know the devotee's name, but he wrote, the narration cannot be well heard more than the way it is presented. Thank you, Prabhu. Late as I am, when you now in the second volume, chapter 8, I am hoping to follow you through. And then we have Narshingananda Prabhu from Mauritius.
Yes, Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, excellent presentation. Words fail to describe the wonderful presentation from start to finish. You fully absorbed us from point to point. Thank you very much. So Thank you, Nrsimhananda Prabhu, for this really wonderful word, touching. And thank you, each and every devotee, to be part of this wonderful journey with Srila Prabhupada's nectar, katha. And before we end, I would inform you that we are going through the week 7, and our next lecture will be given by, actually, on last Saturday, His Holiness Charudesha Maharaj informed us that one of the persons who met Prabhupada became Kavichandra Swami Maharaj. So we tried, with the help of Charudesha Maharaj, to get in touch with Kavichandra Swami Maharaj. And Maharaj, although it's going to be nearly midnight for him, he accepted so gracefully to be part of this wonderful pastime of Prabhupada, and he will be taking part on Thursday, but the timing is different, my dear devotees. We won't be starting at 8, but at 7 p.m. because at 7 p.m. Mauritian time will be 11 p.m. at Maharaj's place. So I'm inviting all of you on Thursday. It's going to be really special, and Maharaj will be speaking on volume 2, chapter 9, entitled "Stay High Forever." And then, cherry on the cake, on Saturday, we will have His Holiness Bhakti Marg Maharaj to speak on volume 2, chapter 10, Beyond the Lower East Side. And the timing is 8 p.m. to 9:30. So I wish to remind all of you that each week that our timings, password, and the meeting ID is the same, right? Even if by somehow or other you don't receive a notification, please know that the ID and the password are the same for Monday, Thursday, and Saturday. With these few words, I thank all of you, and we would end by chanting one Maha Mantra and then of our basis all the Vaishnava and Vaishnavis present here tonight. So I'll request all of you to please. Second, unmute yourself, and we'll chant one Maha Mantra loudly, and then of our obeisance to all the Vaishnava and Vaishnavis. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare
Rama
Hare.
Rama Hare
Panchakalpatarubhyascha,
Kalpatarubyascha
Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha,
Patitanam Pavanebhyo
Pavanebhyo
Vaishnavebhyo
Vaishnavebhyo
Namaha.
Namo Namaha.
Hare Krishna.
Das Prabhu ki.
Jai.
Krishna, dear devotees. So I will see you on Thursday. Hare Krishna. Stay blessed and please stay safe.